Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving into a subtle but powerful truth about influence, perception, and human behavior. How the way you move, speak, and even disappear at times can shape how others see you. This isn't about manipulation in a shallow sense, but about understanding the deeper psychological game that quietly governs attention, respect, and power in everyday life. Real power often comes from thinking a few steps ahead. It's not just about reacting in the moment, but about knowing where you're heading, having a clear sense of your direction months in advance. When you understand your own intentions, your decisions become sharper, more deliberate. But at the same time, there's value in not revealing everything. When people can't easily predict your next move, they stay alert, they pay attention, and in a way, they grant you more presence without you asking for it. There's also something to be said about restraint in communication. Speaking less, but with purpose, tends to create a stronger impression than constant talking. When someone fills every silence, it often signals a lack of control rather than confidence. But when a person chooses their words carefully, their voice naturally carries more weight. Silence, when used well, becomes part of the message. At a deeper level, human interaction itself is a kind of performance. From a very young age, we learn to adjust how we behave depending on who we're with. A child quickly figures out how to act differently with parents than with friends. This doesn't make us fake. It makes us social. If we expressed every raw thought without filter, relationships would collapse. So we adapt, we present different sides of ourselves, and that's part of functioning in any society. As people rise in life, whether in business, leadership, or influence, they usually do so because of a particular strength. It could be confidence, empathy, communication skills, or even assertiveness. But the problem begins when they cling too tightly to that one trait. The world shifts, circumstances evolve, and what once made them successful can slowly become a limitation. True strength lies in the ability to adjust, to read the moment, and to evolve with changing conditions rather than resisting them. There's also a psychological aspect to attention. People naturally lose interest in what feels constant and predictable. When someone is always visible, always speaking, always present, their impact begins to fade. But when presence is balanced with absence, when someone steps back occasionally, it creates curiosity. That space makes others wonder, reflect, and even anticipate their return. It's a quiet but effective way of maintaining relevance without forcing it. This balance between being seen and stepping away is delicate but powerful. If you're always available, people take you for granted. If you're never available, they forget you. But if you learn when to show up and when to disappear, you create a rhythm that keeps people engaged without exhausting yourself. Another important aspect is understanding human ego, especially when dealing with people in positions above you. Power often comes with hidden insecurity. Even the most confident individuals tend to question their relevance, their image, and how they're perceived. If you unintentionally outshine them too strongly, especially in public settings, it can trigger those insecurities. Not always consciously, but enough to shift how they see you. That's why awareness matters. If you contribute to something and do it well, it's wise to share the spotlight rather than dominate it. Let others feel recognized. Let them hold on to their sense of importance. It doesn't reduce your value. It actually protects your position in the long run. And when mistakes happen, as they inevitably do, the way you respond defines your credibility. A genuine apology isn't about deflecting blame or minimizing what happened. It's about acknowledging the mistake clearly and showing that you understand its impact. People can sense sincerity, and over time, that honesty rebuilds trust more effectively than any excuse ever could. In the end, influence isn't just about what you do. It's about how you manage perception, timing, and behavior. It's about knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to act and when to wait, when to appear and when to step back. Those who understand this balance don't just move through life, they shape how life responds to them. When you contribute to something meaningful, it's important to strike a balance in how you present your role. If you openly acknowledge the person above you and let them receive part of the recognition, it creates goodwill. It shows awareness. It signals that you understand the unspoken hierarchy. But if you go too far in the other direction, downplaying yourself completely, you risk appearing insignificant. The key is nuance. Do excellent work, own your contribution quietly, but allow others to feel valued in the process. Because underneath everything, people are driven by ego and insecurity more than they admit. This is one of those uncomfortable truths that, once you see it, you can't unsee. If you unintentionally make someone feel overshadowed or threatened, especially someone in a higher position, the consequences won't always be immediate, but they will come. Resentment builds quietly, and eventually it shows itself in subtle resistance, distance, or even direct opposition. So awareness of other people's emotional landscape is not optional, it's essential. At the same time, you have to understand that nothing in the world truly comes without a cost. When someone offers something for free, there is often an underlying motive, something they expect in return, even if it's not clearly stated. That's why strong, stable relationships, especially in business, are built on clear exchanges. Paying people fairly not only respects their work, it also establishes a healthier dynamic. Generosity, when it's genuine, signals confidence. On the other hand, being overly tight with money or resources often reflects insecurity, and over time, it damages trust. But this doesn't mean you hand out everything blindly. It means you recognize value and you compensate it appropriately. People who are serious about working with you, who understand their worth and communicate it clearly, are usually the ones worth investing in. That creates a relationship built on mutual respect, rather than hidden expectations. One of the most powerful shifts you can make in your mindset is learning to focus outward instead of inward. Most people are trapped inside their own heads, constantly thinking about how they're perceived, whether they're appreciated, whether they're getting enough attention. That kind of thinking drains you and limits your perspective. The real advantage comes when you step outside of that loop and start observing others instead. Pay attention to what people need, what they respond to, what motivates them. Study patterns, trends, behavior. The more you understand others, the more effectively you can navigate any environment. This ability to read people and situations accurately is one of the most valuable skills you can develop, and it separates those who struggle from those who quietly move ahead. And when it comes to your 20s, this is where everything begins to take shape. It's a time that offers both freedom and opportunity, but also a hidden risk. If you treat it only as a period of enjoyment, without building anything solid underneath, you reach your 30s without direction. On the other hand, if you become too rigid, chasing only one narrow path, you miss out on developing range. The smarter approach is to treat your 20s as a form of apprenticeship. Explore, yes, but also commit to learning. Build real skills. Not just one, but a few that you go deep into over time. By the time you reach 30, you want to have both experience and substance. Something that holds together. Something that gives you leverage. And one thing people often underestimate is that learning itself is a skill. It requires patience. It demands that you sit through moments of boredom, frustration, and repetition. Most people avoid that discomfort, which is exactly why they never truly master anything. In the end, this is not just about success in a career or business. It's about understanding how people operate, how value is created, and how you position yourself in a way that is both strategic and sustainable. When you combine awareness of others with discipline in yourself, you move differently. And that difference is what shapes the outcome of your life. And here's the part most people never reach. The moment where everything you've learned stops being information and starts becoming instinct. Because up until now, it all sounds like strategy, like something you do. But real transformation happens when it becomes something you are. You don't remind yourself to stay quiet. You naturally speak less. You don't force yourself to observe. You automatically notice what others miss. You don't try to appear composed. You become unshaken. And that's when people start to feel your presence before you even say a word. There's a shift that happens when you stop chasing attention and start controlling it. Most people spend their lives trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to prove something. But the moment you stop needing that validation, ironically, that's when people begin to look at you differently. Because now, you're not reacting, you're choosing. And that difference is everything. Think about it. The person who is always explaining themselves, always justifying their actions, always trying to make sure everyone understands them, slowly loses weight in the room. But the one who speaks with precision, who doesn't rush to fill silence, who lets others wonder a little, that person holds gravity. And gravity pulls people in. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This level of control comes with a cost. You will be misunderstood. People will call you distant, even when you're simply being intentional. They'll say you've changed, when in reality, you've just stopped behaving in ways that were easy for them to predict. Some will feel unsettled by your calmness, especially those who were used to getting reactions out of you. And if you're not prepared for that, you'll fall back into old patterns just to keep people comfortable. But growth has never been about comfort, not yours, and definitely not theirs. There's a quiet discipline in holding your ground without explaining it to everyone, in letting people form their own interpretations while you stay aligned with your direction. Because once you're clear on where you're going, you don't need constant agreement from the outside world. You just need consistency. And consistency is rare. Most people are controlled by their moods, their emotions, their environment. One good day, they're focused. One bad moment, they fall apart. But the ones who build real influence, they operate beyond that. They don't wait to feel ready. They move anyway, not recklessly, but deliberately. And that's where another layer reveals itself. Adaptability. Because it's not enough to be disciplined. It's not enough to be self-aware. If you become rigid, if you cling too tightly to one version of yourself, you'll eventually break under pressure. The world doesn't stay still. People don't stay the same. Situations evolve, and if you don't evolve with them, you become predictable. And predictability, over time, becomes weakness. The strongest individuals are the ones who can shift without losing themselves. They can be calm when needed, assertive when required, silent when it's strategic, and expressive when it matters. They're not stuck in one identity. They move fluidly, depending on the moment. And that kind of flexibility, that's power. But it requires something most people avoid: honest self-reflection. You have to be willing to look at yourself without filters, to recognize where you're acting out of insecurity instead of intention, to admit when your need for validation is driving your decisions, to notice when your ego is louder than your awareness, because if you don't see it, you can't change it. And if you can't change it, it will control you. This is why focusing outward becomes such a game changer. The less you're trapped in your own head, the more clearly you see the world around you. You start noticing patterns in behavior. You start understanding what people really respond to, not what they say, but what they show. And once you understand that, you stop taking things personally. Someone's reaction isn't always about you, their attitude, their resistance, their behavior. It often comes from their own fears, their own insecurities, their own internal battles. And when you truly understand that, you stop reacting emotionally to everything. You respond intelligently instead. And that shift alone can change the entire trajectory of your life. Because now, you're not just living, you're navigating. You're not just reacting, you're choosing. You're not just present, you're aware. And awareness is what separates those who stay stuck from those who move forward. But let's bring this back to something real. Your time, especially your 20s, because this is where most people either build a foundation or create confusion that follows them for years. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life. In fact, you should. Experience things, travel if you can, meet different people, put yourself in new environments. All of that shapes you. But if that's all you do, you'll wake up one day feeling like nothing connects. No real skills, no direction, no leverage, just memories. And memories don't build futures. At the same time, going to the extreme, locking yourself into one rigid path without exploring, can limit you just as much. You might become skilled, but not adaptable, focused, but not aware. So the balance matters. Use this time to experiment, but also to commit. Learn things deeply. Not just surface-level knowledge, but real, usable skills. Things that take time, things that require patience, things that frustrate you. Because that frustration, that boredom, that repetition, that's where mastery is built. Most people quit there. That's why most people never stand out. But if you can stay in that phase longer than others, if you can push through the discomfort of learning, you separate yourself without even trying to compete. And over time, those small, consistent efforts compound into something powerful. Not overnight, not instantly, but inevitably. And that's the part people don't talk about enough. Inevitability. When you combine awareness, discipline, adaptability, and patience, success stops being luck. It becomes a direction, a natural outcome of how you operate. You don't chase it. You build towards it, quietly, strategically, relentlessly. So as you move forward from here, don't just take this as motivation. Motivation fades. It always does. Take this as a shift in how you see things. Start observing more. Start reacting less. Start thinking a few steps ahead. Start valuing your time, your energy, and your focus like they actually matter, because they do. And most importantly, start becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to prove anything loudly, because their presence already says enough. That's the level. That's the standard. And once you reach it, you don't go back. If this resonated with you, stay with it. Let it sit. Let it challenge you. Because the real work doesn't happen while you're listening. It happens in how you move after this ends. If this made you think a little deeper, make sure you stay connected. There's a lot more to explore.